Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're taking a hard look at something we literally all do, probably multiple times a day, honestly without even thinking about it. Picture this, you're just sitting there, scrolling on your phone. It feels totally mundane, right? But what if I told you that this completely everyday experience is actually a profound biological mystery just waiting to be solved? I mean, it's a massive paradox, isn't it? We're this insanely intelligent species, we've built sprawling civilizations, we've decoded our own DNA, and yet our highly evolved brains get completely captured, like effortlessly hijacked, by an algorithmic feed full of absolute strangers we've literally never met. So why does this happen? How does a glowing piece of glass in our hands hold so much power over our neurobiology?
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand what's happening to us, we need to rewind and look at this brilliant observation by a scientist named Tinbergen from about 70 years ago. He was studying gulls, and he made this wild discovery. He found that if you build a fake egg, make it a bit bigger, rounder, and way more speckled than a real one, the mother bird will actually abandon her own real clutch of eggs just to sit on the counterfeit one. Crazy, right? But here's the thing. She isn't stupid. Her biological machinery was just perfectly calibrated for an ancestral world where nothing could out-egg an egg. She never needed a defense mechanism against a supernormal stimulus. And as we're going to see today, that exact same biological loophole is happening to the social cues being fed directly into our own brains. All right, Section 1, meet your tribal OS. So to figure out how we're being hacked, we first have to map out our own internal hardware. You can think of this as your tribal OS, or your tribal operating system. Based on an incredible synthesis of human psychology and evolutionary biology, we can basically break this OS down into two ancient systems running in the background. First, there's a system that draws a boundary. It's constantly scanning and sorting everyone we meet into ours or theirs. And then, second, there's a status system that allocates deference and influence, but crucially, only to the people inside that boundary. Let's look closer at that first system, the boundary detector. This thing is entirely upstream of status. Before you even consciously decide how much you respect someone, your brain has already decided if they're on your team or not. And here is the absolutely wildest part about this. The detector is incredibly promiscuous. It doesn't actually track fixed traits. What it tracks is alliance. It is so deeply learnable that it can be triggered by totally arbitrary cues. I'm talking things like the flip of a coin, the color of someone's shirt, or even just what sports team you accidentally cheered for at a bar. If you get assigned to a random group over a coin toss, your brain instantly starts favoring that group. But this means that a system that learns its boundary from its environment can be handed a boundary by whoever or whatever controls that environment. And this brilliantly illustrates why there's really no such thing as generic status. Status is entirely coalition relative. Look, if you see a highly competent expert who happens to be part of your in-group, your brain immediately goes, oh great, this is a model I should copy and learn from. But if that exact same expert with the exact same undeniable skills belongs to the out-group, boom, your brain flags them as a threat. They're not a role model, they're an enemy with dangerous skills you need to be extremely wary of. The boundary literally changes how your brain processes the human being in front of you. Section 2, the 4 channels of status. All right, so once the boundary gates sort someone as ours, how do we actually decide who gets the influence? Well, we move into the runtime channels of our tribal OS. Evolution basically gave us 4 distinct channels of deference to figure out where to put our social investment. 1, we copy the competent, that's prestige. 2, we submit to the formidable, that's dominance. 3, we desire the beautiful, which is attractiveness. And 4, we tend the needy, that's care. Every single bit of human influence flows through these 4 ancient pipes. Now let's do a super quick mental exercise to map these biological cues right onto our modern digital habits. I want you to imagine opening your favorite app for just a 90-second scroll. You swipe, and first up, you hit the prestige channel. A total stranger with 2 million followers confidently explains a brand new concept to you. Now, ancestrally, if a massive crowd was paying attention to someone, it meant they were highly competent and definitely worth listening to. So today, your brain sees that follower count and immediately, without thinking, confers unearned credibility. You swipe again. Now you hit dominance. You see someone absolutely demolish a rival in a quote post, inflicting this massive social cost while thousands of people pile on and laugh. While your ancestral hardware interprets that online cost infliction as literal physical formidability. It instantly triggers this ancient, deep-seated reflex to just submit to the strongman. Swipe again. Attractiveness. A perfectly filtered, probably surgically maintained face stares back at you, captured at an angle they've rehearsed literally 1,000 times. Remember that fake gull leg we talked about? Yeah, this is exactly that. It's a synthetic, supernormal stimulus. It completely hijacks your mate value appraisal system, tricking your brain into allocating deference to completely manufactured beauty. One last swipe, and we hit the care channel. You see a stranger trauma dumping, broadcasting a distress cue out to millions of people. This extracts our mammalian caregiving bond. It's this incredibly powerful reflex we have that was designed to make us tend to helpless infants in our local physical tribe. And it's now being weaponized by someone you've literally never met. 4 cues, 4 ancient systems, hijacked in 90 seconds. Section 3, hijacked by the feed. Let's pause that scrolling exercise for a second to really look at how these ancient channels are being exploited at such a massive scale and why our brains just can't tell the difference. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the fatal flaw in our hardware. Ancestrally, 3 of these channels were strictly verified by physical constraints. You couldn't fake being 7 feet tall to show dominance. You couldn't magically use a filter to change your face for attractiveness. And if you claimed to be sick to get care, the whole village could just walk over and check on you. Even prestige was verified by cost. You had to actually prove your skills over years of hard work. But modern technology removes those constraints way faster than it removes costs. It entirely strips away our ancestral verifiers. A follower count replaces a lifetime of earned respect. A filter replaces actual genetics. We are left totally defenseless against forged signals. Which brings us to the core exploit happening right this second, the coalition scaling hijack. Basically, this is the industrial scale simulation of face-to-face coalition signals, delivered at a broadcast scale that entirely removes any possible way for us to verify them. Our biological hardware automatically assumes that if we feel a coalition signal, a real coalition must exist. It's a reflex. But the feed is delivering all the cues of the tribe, the loyalty, the outrage, the shared identity, without the shared fate, the physical presence, or the actual interdependence of a real-world community. Section 4. The collapse of leveling. So if we're constantly being flooded with all this fake authority and all these forged signals, why on earth don't our natural social defenses kick in? Let's take a look at why our historical immune system completely fails against algorithmic media. Ancestrally, we actually had a brilliant defense mechanism against captured authority. Anthropologists call it the leveling coalition. If someone in a hunter-gatherer band got way too aggressive or arrogant, like if they tried to dominate the group, the rest of the band would use gossip to coordinate a sanction. They would literally gang up and bring the upstart back down to earth. It was our collective immune response. But to work, this defense requires face-to-face contact. It requires a physical target to point at, and most importantly, it requires a unified us to do the pointing. Which leads us to this really profound realization. You cannot form a coalition against a feed. Just let that sink in for a second. A feed is diffuse. It has no physical body that you can depose. Sure, you can overthrow a king, you can rebel against a corrupt local boss, but algorithmic authority, it's ambient, it's individually tailored to your specific phone. Our ancestral break fails completely because there's no single target for the group to actually unite against. And here is the truly chilling part of why our immune response fails today. It's not just that the target is distributed across the internet. It's that our own boundary detector has been completely fragmented. Remember, a leveling coalition requires a shared we. But the exact same machine, the feed, that is manufacturing all this fake authority is also manufacturing our tribes. It splits the population into mutually hostile camps. So instead of banding together to level the dominant exploiters, we just end up viewing the other manufactured tribes as the enemy. The exploit dissolves the exact machinery that historically brought authority down in the first place. Which brings us to Section 5, how we take it back. I know, this all sounds a bit overwhelming. Our hardware is hacked, our defenses are down, and our tribes are manufactured. But shifting the narrative starts with understanding actionable structural solutions. We absolutely can take this back. So the crucial point is this. You have to drop the guilt. The idea that you can just use sheer willpower to resist an active algorithmic exploit in the moment, it's a total myth. The strength model of willpower simply fails against systems engineered in billion-dollar labs to bypass your deliberation. The reality is that our energy has to go into structural field alteration. You don't out-resist the feed while you're staring at it. You structurally redesign the environment so you don't even have to try. This is what we call structural self-redesign. And here's your massive advantage. Capture has an asymmetry problem.
The algorithm has to win every single time you scroll. But restructuring your environment, you only need one single moment of clarity offline to delete an app, install a website blocker, or set a hard physical boundary. Once you alter the field does the hard work for you. And honestly, this single moment of clarity is often triggered by what we call dyadic leveling, which is just a fancy way of saying a real face-to-face check-in from a friend or a partner who grounds you back in physical reality. We've seen how deeply our tribal OS is wired into us, and exactly how modern feeds exploit those ancient channels at an unbelievable scale. But recognizing the hijack, that is the very first step to dismantling it. So I want to leave you with this question to think about the next time you instinctively reach for your phone. If a system that learns its boundary from the environment can be handed a boundary by whoever controls the environment, who is configuring yours? Take back the control. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.